As we begin our study of anatomy and physiology, we need to have a little orientation to the human body. Anatomy is the study of the structure of the body parts. Now, this is primarily a function of the lab. Physiology is the study of the function of the body parts, and this is more emphasized in lecture. So why do we study anatomy and physiology together as one topic? Well, that's because of the principle of complementarity. Basically, the principle of complementarity says that function and structure depend upon each other. Things function the way they do because of the way they are made. If we alter the structure of something in the body, we're going to alter its function. Life is extremely organized, and there are several levels of organization in living things. We start at the first level, which is the chemical level. We're going to find out that there are certain basic organic molecules that are common to all living things. These organic molecules organize themselves into cells. Cells are the simplest form of life. As cells organize themselves into groups that have similar functions, we have a tissue. When two or more tissues work together to perform a similar function, we have an organ. And when several organs work together, we have an organ system. The entire organism is the whole living being. This is all of the organ systems working together to perform all of the life functions. You may start out with your basic chemicals, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids, and these will form cells. Let's say it forms a muscle cell. Several muscle cells may group together to make a sheet of muscle cells. This sheet of muscle cells may be incorporated into a tube that becomes a blood vessel. This tube will also have nervous tissue and epithelial tissue in it, so it'll be more than one tissue type. This blood vessel will be a part of the circulatory system. There will be other organs like the heart that help pump the blood throughout the body. The circulatory system, the nervous system, the digestive system, and all the systems of the body make up the entire organism. The major organ systems of the body are the integumentary, the skeletal, the muscular, the nervous, the endocrine, the cardiovascular, the lymphatic, the respiratory, the digestive, the urinary, and the reproductive. These are all of the systems that we will look at in this class. Now, as you start moving forward in anatomy and physiology, there are going to be some really big, strange sounding words. These words can be daunting, but you need to try to learn to pronounce these words and learn to understand what they mean. Most of these big words can be broken down into little word segments, and if you know the meaning of the little word segments, it can help you translate the big word. Let's start by looking at the integumentary system. The parts of the integumentary system are the hair, the skin, and the nails. The function of this system is protection. It helps provide a barrier between you and the outside world. It also protects your deeper tissues from damage. Some medical terms that can help you when you're dealing with this system are things like epi. Epi in a word means a bond. Endo means inside. Derm means skin. The skeletal system are the bones and the joints. The function of the skeletal system is to protect the organs, to act as a framework for muscles to pull on so that your body can move. They're involved in blood cell formation, and your bones store most of the calcium in your body, so mineral storage is one of the functions of the skeletal system. Whenever you see osteo in a word, that means bone. And when you see arthro in a word, that means joint. Cyto or site means cell. And blast in a word means that it's a cell that forms something or it's immature in some way. And clast means it destroys something, it breaks something down. The muscular system functions in movement. Also, muscles produce most of the heat in your body and they help you maintain posture. Now, there are three types of muscle. The skeletal muscle shown in this picture obviously move your bones. Smooth muscle is found in all of your hollow internal organs. When it contracts, it moves materials through those hollow organs. And the cardiac muscle is found in the heart. When cardiac muscle contracts, it moves the blood through the body. Some terms that help you with the muscular system are myo or musk, that means muscle. And sarco means flesh. Now, most of the flesh of your body is your muscle, so sarco also means muscle. The nervous system functions to rapidly communicate with parts of your body. It's composed of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. It controls the activities of your muscles and glands, but this is a pretty instantaneous control. Some terms that help you in the nervous system are neuro, which means nerves. The endocrine system is made up of a whole series of glands. Some you've probably heard of, the thyroid gland, the adrenal gland, the pancreas. Others listed here you may be less familiar with. The function of the endocrine system is also communication with parts of the body, but this is a very slow communication. Hormones control cellular activities. Now, the nervous system controls almost instantaneously. The endocrine system takes minutes to hours to control the cells that it controls. Some of the terms that help you in the endocrine system are crin, which means to secrete, endo, which means internal, exo, which means external, hypo means under or decreased, and hyper means excessive. The cardiovascular system is composed of the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. The function of the cardiovascular system is to transport nutrients and waste throughout the body. Some of the terms that help you here are cardio, which means heart, phlebe, which means vein, vascule means blood vessel, hemo or hemato at the beginning of the word means blood, and emia at the end of a word means blood. The lymphatic system, also sometimes referred to as your immune system because it's involved in immunity, is primarily the lymph nodes and the lymphatic vessels. There are some other organs like your bone marrow, the thymus, and the spleen that are involved in immunity. The function here is to help return fluid from the tissues to the blood. As materials leave the blood to nourish the tissues, some of the blood fluid remains behind in the tissues. It's important that this fluid be returned to the blood, and that's one of the functions of the lymphatic system. The other function is the lymphatic system houses the immune cells and helps protect your body from disease. In terms of medical terminology, angio is a term that means vessel. Your respiratory system is composed of your nasal cavity, your pharynx or throat, larynx or voice box, the trachea, the bronchial tubes, and the lungs. The function of the respiratory system is to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide between the air and the blood. Some of the terms that help you in the respiratory system are pulmon, which means lung, and pneumo, which means air. The digestive system starts at the oral cavity and ends at the anus. In between, you have things like the esophagus, the stomach, the intestines. The liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas are considered part of the digestive system. The function of the digestive system is to break down food to the individual nutrients, absorb those nutrients so that they can be used by your body, and then eliminate any undigested materials from the body. Some of the medical terms that apply to the digestive system are viscero. Viscero is a word that means organs in general. Most of the organs found in your abdominal cavity are digestive system organs, so we tend to use viscero here. Hepato means liver. Pepto has to do with digestion. Gastra means stomach, and entero means intestine. The urinary system, composed of the kidney, the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra, functions to remove nitrogenous waste from your body. These are waste products that are dissolved in your blood that are byproducts of metabolism. The urinary system also helps regulate the water volume of the body and balances blood pH. Some medical terms helpful here are uro, which means urine, nephro, which means kidney, as does renal. Cysto means bladder. The reproductive system functions to produce offspring. Now, in males, the major organ is the testes. In females, the major organ is the ovaries. There are associated organs that help with the functioning of the reproductive system. Medical terminology here, ovi means egg, orchido is the medical term for testes, and hystero or utero is the medical term for uterus. All living things must be able to do certain things, certain life functions. One of them is to maintain boundaries. There always has to be an inside and an outside. We have to have control on what enters the life form. In the cell, we have the cell membrane that does this. In your body, you have the skin. All living things have some sort of movement at some time in their life. All living things can respond to their environment. They can either move toward positive stimuli or move away from negative stimuli. All living things have to be able to break down large, complex molecules to smaller molecules. This is digestion. And these smaller molecules are used in metabolism. Metabolism are all the chemical reactions that go on in a life form that help it produce and use energy. Metabolism always provides us with some things we don't really want. We need to get rid of them. So life forms have to be able to excrete these unwanted materials. Living things must be able to reproduce themselves and they must grow. They either get larger on their own or they increase in cell numbers. Now, in order to live, there are certain survival needs. All living things need nutrients. These are materials that they can break down and use in their metabolism. Oxygen is required to drive the chemical reactions of metabolism. Most things are more than 50% water. Water is important in entering into chemical reactions. It also dissolves most things found in life forms so that these substances can easily be moved around the life form. Humans have to maintain a certain body temperature. This is necessary for chemical reactions to occur. If body temperature goes too high, chemical reactions may stop. If it goes too low, chemical reactions become too slow to sustain life. And finally, we need a certain amount of atmospheric pressure. This helps push oxygen into our blood. One of the concepts of life forms is the concept of homeostasis. This is maintaining equilibrium. Our internal environment, what goes on inside our body, has to stay relatively constant, even though our external environment changes dramatically from minute to minute. Homeostatic mechanisms are simply reactions that help us maintain homeostasis. In a homeostatic mechanism, you have to have a receptor. Now, a receptor is capable of picking up a stimulus and monitoring a condition. This condition could be anything from body temperature to blood glucose levels to sodium levels or blood pressure. The stimulus has to be sent to a control center. The control center will then evaluate the stimulus. If the stimulus is normal, nothing will happen. But if the stimulus is abnormal, the control center will then speak to an effector. An effector is something that can alter the condition. It can make a high blood sugar go down. It can make cool body temperature go up. Whatever needs to be changed, the effector causes the alteration. Homeostatic mechanisms are controlled by feedback mechanisms. Most feedback mechanisms in the body are negative feedback mechanisms. That is, if a stimulus is going up, the effector makes it go back down. And if it's going down, it makes it go back up. Negative feedback systems work sort of like a seesaw, keeping things balanced by going up or down a little bit. Positive feedback mechanisms cause the stimulus to be increased. So in this basic feedback mechanism, we have some variable. This could be blood pressure. Now, as long as your blood pressure is normal, the stimulus is being sent to the receptor sends that stimulus to the control center evaluates the stimulus and says, that's normal, that's normal, that's normal. But if our blood pressure goes up a little bit, now this information that's sent to the control center concerns the control center a little bit. It says, no, that's a little too high. So it sends information on to the effector. And the effector does something to make the blood pressure go back down. This brings us back into balance. And this is how a homeostatic mechanism works. We monitor, we evaluate, and if necessary, we cause a change. A negative feedback mechanism is like the thermostat in your house. If your temperature gets too warm, the heat goes off. If it gets too cold, the heat comes on. Blood glucose. If blood glucose goes too high, hormones are released that will lower blood glucose. If it goes too low, hormones are released that will increase blood glucose. Positive feedback mechanisms are relatively rare. Positive feedback mechanisms have to have some sort of end to them. Otherwise, they just continue to go on and on and on. Childbirth is an example of a positive feedback mechanism. As the muscles of the uterus begin to contract, the baby still inside the uterus puts more pressure on those muscles, making them feel more stretched. This makes them contract more. More pressure, more contraction, more pressure, more contraction. Eventually, the baby is pushed out of the uterus and there is no more pressure put on those muscles. Those muscles can then stop contracting. Homeostatic imbalances occur when there's a failure of some sort of a homeostatic mechanism. This can either be the result of damage to a receptor or the control center or the effector. This is usually called a pathological homeostatic failure. Also, aging tends to cause homeostatic imbalances. As you get older, receptors get less sensitive, control centers get less efficient, effectors may not work as well, and so homeostatic imbalance may occur in the aging. Since we've looked at some medical terms to help you demystify some of the words that we have here, here are a few more terms that may help you. Macro means large, micro means small. If a or an is in front of a word, it means something like no, not, negative. Now we said earlier that emia at the end of the word meant blood. Anemia means no blood. Gen or Genesis means beginning or forming. You can remember that Genesis is the first book of the Bible. Lyse or lysis means rupture, and peri means around. Now, some of the terms that are surgical procedures. Ectomy at the end of the word means the surgical removal of something. Ostomy at the end of the word means we made a surgical opening, and this opening is designed to be a temporary opening, not a permanent opening. And then otomy is also a surgical opening, but otomy implies that the opening will be permanent. Some of the things that are disease related, pathy at the end of the word or patho in a word somewhere means disease. IA or osis at the end of the word means condition. So pneumonia is the condition of air. This is a problem with the lungs. Dis means difficult or bad. Itis means inflammation. Itis is a very important medical term because you can call in and say you have a sore throat if you're sick, or you can call in and say you have pharyngitis, which is an inflammation of the throat, which sounds more deadly. Oma means tumor, and algia means pain.